Hello, everyone. Jan, do you not know what the countdown means? It's very clear.
I couldn't remember who's supposed to talk first.
It's never you. It's never you. That's all you need to remember. All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome to this episode of pwn.talk. I think we're on episode 8, if I am remembering correctly. And we have a absolutely killer episode for you. We recently had an incident, I think 2 weeks ago. That was the morning of 1,000 requests, which we'll get into. So we have a full house today, all the crew. Let's start with Mr. Beard himself. Why don't you say hello?
Hello? Applause?
All right. And Dr. Connor?
Hello, I'm Dr. Connor, aka Kanak, aka other pronunciations of Kanak.
Kanak. And finally, the man, the myth, the legend, the guy who ruined the introduction because he can't understand how the podcast that we've done 7 times so far goes.
Hello, hackers. But maybe 8 times the charm.
It obviously wasn't. This was the 8th time.
Oh, shit.
Off by 1 errors are a bitch.
Figured out, bro.
All right.
Problems
yes.
in computer science.
Naming,
always. Cache and validation, and off by 1 errors.
That is the classic joke, my friend. Great. Okay, so first, let's get situated. What day was this where this happened?
I think this was last Wednesday, right? Because we were talking about doing a podcast last Wednesday, but
that's right.
Ran out of time for it.
Yeah, we didn't have a time because of, let's say, because
it got denied.
This firefighting. Okay, it's like 8 a.m. Arizona time. You wake up, Connor, or was it 7?
6 a.m.
6
I don't normally wake up at 6 a.m., but that day I did.
That day you did. And what happened? What'd you do that day?
So I checked my phone at 6 a.m. I don't know why I was awake. For some reason, I was awake at 6 a.m. And I rolled over, checked my phone. And I saw in our Discord, we had a hostage negotiation message sitting there saying, give us money or I leak database site down until money. I was like, all right, this guy's...
You mean like a kidnapping ransom notice?
Yeah, like a kidnapping ransom, exactly. Yeah. So I was like, all right, this guy is like memeing or something. But then I just roll over and I go to pwn.college on my phone. I'm like, it's not responding. I'm like, there might be more credibility to this message. And I was like, well, I guess I'm awake. Let's go figure out what's going on today.
Do you have the text of the message that you can read? Let's redact the Discord name. I don't want people to get...
Really?
What?
The Discord names?
No, we'll redact it.
It's for the same reason like as other things. You don't want to feed the trolls, right? You don't want to like actually give them the notoriety that they're looking for or the money that they're looking for either.
So it started with a classic yawn opener, actually. So I don't know if this is yawn in disguise, but it started with yo.
Whoa.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, and then it continues on to dear admin. Dear admin, smiley face. You have 24 hours time to send 250 euros to this XMR Monero address. What will happen if you do not accept our offer? We will hold your website/backend pwn.college connection for unknown time offline. Can't pay the ransom? We will find a solution. Email us. Pay the ransom? Kind regards. And that was the message. Yeah, they were giving us other options.
Now this, from my perspective, did you ask me about the backups the night before? You did, which is wild. I didn't understand. I thought it was correlated until I went back and looked at that.
Yeah, I realized that our only true doomsday scenario is that we lose a copy of the database. So every 6 months, I'm like, yo, Adam, is your cloud backup of the database thing still working?
And the answer is yes. So there's and this is actually, what we should really test, we've talked about reliability. The true question is how quickly can we go spin up a new version, like a new instance of the dojo with that data? I think that would be a key backup because that data is actually we're trying to do things correct. It is encrypted with a key that I think only the 4 of us have, and it is then uploaded to S3. So it is in S3 right now, but even if you got a handle on that, you wouldn't be able to decrypt that without the key that we have. But yeah, and what's crazy is I checked that night and we have like 1.7 terabytes of backups. We're backupping hourly or something, like literally
Adam,
insane.
you messaged me on your alt Adam D2 account asking for the key, right? Like was I?
I am confident that you have no idea of how to even look up that key and find it. So I think that's actually perfectly fine.
So I don't know if I even know how to find that key. So I think you might be the only one, Adam, that knows how to redeploy in a nuclear scenario.
I think if you had to, you could find it.
Probably.
It wouldn't. Yeah. That's all I'm going to say. It definitely is available to you somehow, but you would have to find it.
Yeah.
We should probably practice that scenario at some point. But anyways, okay. That's like, what is interesting is this message popped up from Connor. I was like, oh, that's interesting. I should check because we have done a bunch of changes. I know that thing is working like gangbusters and uploading those backups, but pwn.college is down. So then you get this ransom notice, which is very sketchily worded, right? Almost intentionally. And I think what's really interesting to me about this is like from the cybercrime perspective. So there's like a lot of, I think one of the first instances of this that I remember hearing was Japanese pop-ups. So on like, because I believe there would be either, I can't remember if it was malware installed on their computers or something, but like they'd get a pop-up saying like, hey, we see that you're looking at porn and you live here, and it would give the city and it'd be like, we're going to tell your friends and neighbors that you're watching this dirty stuff unless you pay us money. And it kind of leveraged like this cultural, thing. And plus non-technical people didn't realize that they don't actually know where you are. They're just literally looking up your IP address and locating it to a city, maybe a neighborhood, and people would pay, right? And so very often, this is one of the things, like teaching people about how to be wary against this stuff is, that even if they have information about you, it doesn't mean that it's real. It doesn't mean that they actually have this. So like there is specific wording in there that when I double checked it was very concerning. So what was that wording that concerned you?
I mean, the thing that concerned me is I had just woken up randomly at 6 a.m. and had no idea what the heck was going on. But B, that there was like an actual thing behind the message, which was that the website was down. So like, and I had no idea beyond that. Like, I was imagining worst case scenario where somehow he compromised the main node's host, could leak the whole database. In theory, if you compromise the main host, you could get our Discord bot stuff, and you could nuke the entire Discord. You could do all sorts of destructive actions in the worst case. And I really didn't know what to expect of what had actually occurred, especially since, we constantly have security vulnerabilities. Maybe not constantly. That's a little bit of an unfair characterization.
pwn.college has granted CVEs, and we're in the process of granting another one.
In fact, we're in the process of granting one right now that was recently patched. It wasn't so severe. I think the most severe vulnerability we've had, at least in the last few years, is arbitrary solves. Like you could just arbitrarily solve challenges, which is
that's not a
which is bad for our platform. We don't like that. No, arbitrary as in you could solve any challenge given the same solution. Right.
Yes. I still would argue that is a logical flaw in our platform, right? But what I think about it when I think about a vulnerability in something we grant CVEs for is that someone running the dojo could have their infrastructure compromised, or learners can compromise each other.
Yeah, exactly. So like the losing control over whether or not someone actually solved a challenge is unideal. Like, especially, someone could start selling this to students and people start solving things. I don't know, bad things. We definitely don't want that. But you're right. Then the next tier up is like access to the database, access to other users' home directories, admin access to our Discord through our infrastructure. These sorts of like that. That's definitely the next tier up of terrifying.
Yeah, and I believe their message was deliberately worded to make you think that, right? It said like, we control your front end and back end, or your database and something.
I don't know if I have that screenshot still saved, but at some point they were like, they like were sending fake screenshots of the database. in a format that is not
Wait,
our
really?
database format.
Oh my
yeah,
God.
yeah.
Incredible.
Because someone was taunting them or something and being like, "Oh, leak me my password," and then they like faked something. I was like, "This is not our database."
The incredible part of this to me was
show us the directory of username and password as files.
Exactly.
What I loved about this whole thing is they show up and people are just like trolling them.
So that's the other thing. So talk about that, Jan. When you say show up, what does that mean?
They just drop in on the Discord, right, and start posting this.
Yeah, that's crazy. I mean, most of the time, so at least the way I know, just to give context of like, again, standard cybercrime stuff, like there is like oftentimes just like the mafia, runs protection rackets and they like break your store windows and they come to you the next day like, wow, it really sucks that all of the windows on your store got broken. We sell protection from anyone breaking your windows. So pay us money and we'll make sure your windows don't get broken. Right. Of course, it is them doing the breaking and then charging you money to not do the bad thing. So very similarly, a standard kind of cybercrime is people will, let's say, take over a system or whatever, but like convince you to give them money, but they reach out to you through email. Like they figure out who to email. And this was very different, Jan. So why was that different?
I mean, they just showed up in a general channel.
On the Discord.
Like, it's full kind of laziness.
Except
but that's
not,
fine.
because they knew at least something about the target.
Yeah. I guess that's true. But I mean, I think many online communities nowadays, many websites have an associated Discord server. So it's not quite crazy that, there'd be a Discord server for them to go to. I could see that being kind of a normal, relatively successful strategy, right? You go, rather than figuring out, security info team like, who do you email? You just show up and hey, it'll get to the right people eventually. But what was amazing is just watching people start to troll them.
Yeah, and here's the interesting thing. So thanks, Amateur Hour is mentioning that it was a very interesting mix, and I think as we dig in, that they clearly did some research, right? They understood that this is a website. They understood that there was that there is this Discord server, but they also like asked for euros, which is weird. Like you can know by the IP address that IP address was located in Arizona or like anything on the site. And they also did it at a really terrible time for Arizona time, right? Like 6 a.m. Like Connor's still asleep. Like, thank God Connor woke up. Like,
it was a coincidence I was awake. Under normal days, I'm not up till 8. Like the site, yeah.
Yeah, it just would have been down. And we'd have been like, well, that's weird. And we're like, well, kind of normal pwn.college behavior based on what we talked about at the beginning of this semester. Well, Jan probably pushed some shitty feature that took down the server.
That rarely happens. Once a month at the most.
Exactly. And this was September. So this was the month.
That would have been September's feature.
Exactly.
Maybe the whole thing was me covering for a feature I pushed.
Creating an alt. Oh God.
Because I've had those like 4 a.m. I push something and things are just getting progressively worse. Like now the main node won't even start up. And like, Docker, it happened during DEF CON. Right, like things just getting worse and worse and worse and worse, and I'm like, at that point, I wish I had thought of faking a DDoS Saturday night to just post this message and go to bed.
It's like
people would wake up. It's like, oh,
that is a good idea.
I guess the DDoS are left. I don't know, but
that was
like
our fake students saying how great the platform is.
Exactly.
Sock puppet DOSer accounts. I was thinking about the reverse of a student pulling a fire alarm because of an exam. Like the professor doesn't have the exam ready, so they pull the fire alarm and be like, whoops, can't have the exam today. Okay, Connor. So then you get this message. You're kind of thinking, oh shit, like this person is also posting in the channel and then interacting, like Jan said, not just posting in general and then going back. I believe, I don't know what the direct message pattern was, but I think I got direct message by them at some point. And like, I don't know if they did all Sensei or they just did but they must have
Sensei, I think.
Yeah, they must have figured out something. And they're also interacting because people in the chat are also pwn.college people who now the pwn.college site is down and they have nothing to do but to talk in the Discord. And so what was your next step? You say, shit, the website's down and somebody's asking for a ransom.
So my immediate thought was like, okay, we don't know how bad this is. My top thought is I'm not going to ban this person or interact with them in any way. I'm just going to like let the community meme with them and just try and see how bad the damage is. So I SSH'd into the infrastructure, ran like who is who, I think. Who is the command? Like, I'm like, is there other people even SSH'd in this? How, like, what is the immediate thing? Immediately I realized, no, there is no one else SSH'd into this box. But of course, I don't know. Maybe they're very sophisticated and have ways of avoiding that and so on. I exec in and I just run Docker logs against our site, and I just see that the workers are constantly restarting, which, as we were talking about earlier in the semester, that was a symptom of just like the website not being nicely designed. But pretty quickly, I because I still haven't learned how to use our fancy Splunk stuff, I did Docker logs and some bash wizardry with the help of ChatGPT to basically see what endpoints have been getting lots of traffic. And I basically saw that slash was like being hit like hundreds of times a second. I was like,
later
okay,
that night, we got
probably DDoS.
Later that night, we got our daily Splunk report of like slow endpoints or endpoints that had errors. And usually it's like, I don't know, whatever. The scoreboard sometimes errors out or whatever. And this is like hundreds of thousands of connections slash errored out. It's pretty good.
Yeah. So once I realized it was just lots of requests to slash, I immediately became like not so concerned. Only concerned that like this might take days to resolve because we have really bad performance, and who the heck knows how long it's going to take to actually make ourselves undDOSable.
Right. So these were then, so exactly. So you realize that it was a denial of service, right? And that goes to like, that also is I was talking about the protection racket, that this literally is a thing that people would do. They would say like, they would just find a small, medium-sized business, DOS the website, take them down, send them an email saying, hey, it sucks that your website is down. To prove that I'm the one that's doing this, in 5 minutes, it's going to go back up for 5 minutes, and then it's going to go down. And then afterwards, they'd say, okay, are you ready to pay me whatever, $100,000 to go away? Yeah. And so very clearly, it's like, okay, they didn't, if they had compromised the infrastructure, there's way better ways to take it down than like whatever the hell they did, right? Like even a literal like ransomware that like would have encrypted all of the files, like that would have been a real pain in the butt to like recover from, and that would have been much more of a pain.
Yeah, exactly. So once I realized we were being DOSed or denial of service in some way, I've never dealt with this before. So I was like, all right, let's think from first principles. How the heck do you deal with this? So initially I started seeing like how many IP addresses were hitting us. I was like hopeful that maybe the person was just DOSing us from a single IP, and I know enough of IP tables to just block a single IP. I was like, maybe that'll be the solution.
But almost enough. We'll get into that later.
Yeah, almost. It's true. Almost enough IP tables knowledge. But I saw, sure enough, it's just like dozens, hundreds of IP addresses. So I was like, all right, this is going to be a bigger pain. I honestly, I just started talking to ChatGPT, see what our options are here. Figure out, can we do some sort of IP rate limiting thing, or do we need to go to Nginx to do some sort of rate limiting thing? Like, I was imagining, probably Nginx has support for making it so a certain IP address can only access so many times. But then I was like, they're spreading across lots of IPs, and our website's not very optimized. Sometimes you might need to hit like 50 different endpoints in like a second. So I'm like, how am I going to figure out the right threshold to prevent this? And I was just envisioning all of these cat and mouse games that I would be playing for the next 2 days or more with this guy, depending on how serious they were. And that's when I realized, like, oh yeah, there's a thing called Cloudflare.
Cloudflare.
Yeah.
And I don't want to ignore Mr. Beard. Did you wake up after all this stuff was over? That's my guess, but
yep.
Okay, great. Feel free to jump in at any time. I thought that's what your story was.
I had a great nap.
You were probably just going to bed at 6 a.m.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's about right.
Should I check phone college before bed? Nah, it'll be there when I wake up.
You never check phone college before bed. That is a strong rule.
Yeah.
Of survival.
Yeah, okay. So then you're worried. So Cloudflare. So Jan, can you tell us about Cloudflare in general? What is it? Like, what is?
My first exposure to Cloudflare is DEF CON 2011. I'm responsible for the infrastructure that Shellfish brought, like the networking infrastructure that Shellfish brings to finals. Me and what was his handle? It was me and another guy. And we had spent the whole summer writing this like absolutely unbelievable, incredible CTF infrastructure that would make us immune to any potential flat compromise. But it all assumed that everything would be IPv4 because, everything normal is IPv4. We show up and the whole network is IPv6 and it's a shit show. And we spent the entire time, my entire DEF CON that year was spent fucking around with IPv6 trying to make shit work. And at one point, this is where Cloudflare we're taking a small step toward Cloudflare becoming more relevant.
I'm so lost. I know exactly what you're talking about. I don't think the person you're talking about has a handle.
Really?
He just had a name that we called him.
That's not very hacker. Anyways, all right.
I didn't have a handle until I had to have one. Anyways, continue.
The point is, we're sitting there, and we are desperately trying to get shit working. And unbeknownst to us, at the same time, the way that the infrastructure was that year, there were maybe 4 different FreeBSD machines that each ran, 4 different FreeBSD jails that were responsible for 4 different teams or whatever, right? Unbeknownst to us, one of the other teams on our box who was co-located on our machine with our vulnerable jail in which our services ran, had a FreeBSD 0 day that they burned and rooted the organizer's machine, dropped into all of the other jails. And as I am typing, trying to get some stupid, shit running, the whole terminal goes blank, and this incredible ASCII art of a dude on roller skates hanging off of a helicopter. Like, it was incredible. It was like a movie, like being hacked in the movie where your screen just starts going crazy. And it was someone on the team, full skaters dropping from roller skaters dropping from Raffle. That was the team. They had rooted this thing, and anyways, that person worked for Cloudflare. That's my first exposure to Cloudflare in 2011.
That was the purpose of this whole story?
Yeah. That's so my point is, ever since then, I think Cloudflare is these super, super elite people. And I told this story to
oh my!
I was chatting with one of the co-founders of Cloudflare a couple months ago, and I told him this story. I'm like, so you guys have really elite people, and he looked at me kind of similarly to how you're looking at me right now. Yeah. Anyways,
moving on.
The story actually does help contribute because, spoiler alert, we're not going to get too far, but there is truth to the story that they are very pro.
Yes, exactly. And so, as I see
not
Cloudflare,
at BSD jails and hacking fucking BSD systems. What
it's
in the
all
world?
the same. You're either pro or you're not. It doesn't matter, man, what the domain is.
Okay, Jan was very good. I don't think I'd say then, because of knowing Jan, that everyone at Wells Fargo was elite hacker and pro.
Well, it looks like we're not getting sponsored by Wells Fargo.
I mean,
thanks, man.
any other bank.
Any other banks looking for sponsorships?
Maybe they have pro people who listen to this podcast. If they listen to this podcast, they're pro people. If they use Pwn College, they're pros. They're getting better. They're on their way to becoming a pro.
Pwn College, quite literally brought to you by Cloudflare.
Okay. Rob, do you know anything about Cloudflare? Can I throw it to you, or do I need to explain what Cloudflare is?
No,
do you have a long story that's tangentially related to Cloudflare at all?
I have no giant long story.
All right. internet hard. So actually, to tie this back into pwn.college, one of the reasons why pwn.college has such bad latency is because the servers are physically located in a building in ASU. And this means that all of your packets, so if you're accessing us from China, India, whatever, super far away, right? It like the packets have to go to Arizona. They have to go through Arizona ASU's network. And this was how a lot of these devices, these systems were in the web, right? You have your servers have to be located somewhere, and no matter how fast that somewhere is, when people access your stuff, if they are very far away physically, there is, even at fiber optic speeds, there is still the speed of light to contend with, and that causes delays. So I believe Cloudflare started as one of a content delivery network, where the idea is, rather than going to a central location for all of your content when you're accessing like Netflix, or, think about videos, but at the time it was probably images, these kind of bandwidth intensive things, rather than going to somewhere super far away, you can actually put the content locally to like people. And like this could be hyper local. Like I don't know if Cloudflare specifically, but I know some of these CDN content delivery network companies, they like have agreements to put boxes inside of ISPs so that their stuff is right there in that ISP. And their pitch to the ISP is, hey, this is great because it's going to save you bandwidth when like people access people in our content delivery network, because going from your home to your ISP's network is basically free for your ISP. They only pay when your data goes to other ISPs based on crazy like agreements they have. So anyways, I believe that's how they started, as this content delivery network. And then over time, other things that they added was like DOS prevention and DDoS prevention. So they have, I believe, one of the most top of the line like DDoS preventions systems. Yeah. So somebody's mentioning that. Yeah. So like talking to Cloudflare is like a 3 to 4 millisecond ping, but talking to pwn.college is like 200 milliseconds, and that's just like the nature of the network, right? So let me check what I have now.
Dude, you guys want to hear something amazing?
Yeah, so I'm like 20 milliseconds where I am right now. But anyways, so the point is, so this is what Cloudflare does. So part of that, they're a big company now. They actually do a lot of things. They do DNS hosting, they do website hosting, they do these Cloudflare workers that run. Anyways, there's all kinds of stuff that Cloudflare does. But one of the key things they're known for, and not just known, like it used to be like DOS prevention, like you needed to pay a lot of money because people need the ability to soak up gigabytes and terabytes of traffic. But now Cloudflare actually offers that for free. So what did you find when you explored Cloudflare?
So hold on real quick. My background on Cloudflare.
Please. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah.
It wasn't just something that ChatGPT told you.
We were actually, our DNS was already on Cloudflare.
Oh.
Because I have been progressively like trying to understand things that Cloudflare can do. So previously I always used GitHub Pages, right, for deploying a local static website, because they also have all this fancy CDN stuff. But actually, before my wedding, I wanted to like set up like a wedding website or whatever. And I realized that I needed the ability to track RSVPs. And because I was insane and didn't just use some like standard wedding website, I was like, somehow I need state. I was like, what is my solution to state? Because you can't get state in a static website. It turns out that Cloudflare has free stuff for like key value stores. So I was like, oh, I'll just deploy to Cloudflare Pages and then also use their free little state thing. And now I can track reservations. That was my introduction to Cloudflare. And then for some reason, as a result, I moved pwncollege's DNS there too.
I just realized, guys, that entire long story, it wasn't Cloudflare, it was CrowdStrike. The guy worked for CrowdStrike.
Yeah, so but now we're not going to get sponsored by Cloudflare on this.
Checking if it was the co-founder of Cloudflare that I've been talking to, or CrowdStrike, and it was
my God.
Thankfully I didn't fuck that up.
Yeah, and we were going to send this podcast to Cloudflare and see if they wanted to sponsor. And now you just said they're not cool.
Maybe they do. We'd love that.
They're just not cool in the FreeBSD they seem. They're apparently very cool in the DDoS scene.
The networking scene. Anyways, so, okay, thank you for that background, Connor. Now.
That was mine.
Yeah. So now led you to, like, GPT led you to here.
Mm-hmm.
And then what happened?
So, okay, now the other thing with Cloudflare is every time I log in, I see this button in the top right that says under attack ? And I had like vaguely heard of Cloudflare magic, like anti-DDoS stuff. Now I thought that that button in the top right was just like you click here and then we'll contact you with our sales team and we'll go from there. But it turns out that button actually has a button if you're logged in that is the magic anti-DDoS button that I discovered. So we had our DNS with Cloudflare, but we didn't have our site actually proxying through Cloudflare. So this is like a separate toggle when you're in the DNS thing. You're like, okay, I can point my DNS at Cloudflare, and then there's like a little toggle button that says like proxy or not proxy. And I didn't click proxy because I was like, I don't know if we need Cloudflare looking at all of our traffic. But then when we're getting DDoS, I was like, all right, we're going to click that. Maybe that's the magic button. So I was like, all right, we're going to hit proxy and maybe it'll just do the rest. Turns out just proxying is not enough. But it did now start causing, if you ping pwn.college, you're no longer getting an ASU IP address, you're getting a Cloudflare IP address. So like all the underlying technology is just it's a reverse proxy. Everything is flowing through Cloudflare and going all the way to our servers. So that was the first thing.
Yeah, and so this is like a lot of people also use this to hide the IP addresses of their actual web servers. So they set it up such that when you go to whatever the website is, it goes to Cloudflare proxy that then proxies it internally to the actual website and then serves whatever that website says. It also does a lot of, as we found out later, caching and stuff that it's actually doing that's very nice. Okay, so you flipped this switch, you found some giant red button, you pushed it, you flipped the switch, and then what happened? Did it just magically come back up?
No, but so traffic was routing through, and I was reading documentation and clicking on settings, and it said like we had all this anti-bot stuff already on. So it was talking about how like known bad bots, like Cloudflare just blocks those IP addresses. I think even by default, it like is shooting JavaScript into the page to do like trying to detect if you're a bot. So it's like it's doing all of this magic, but it wasn't enough magic. So I guess the next thing I realized though is while looking through lots of settings panels is I was like, okay, so we set up this reverse proxy, but our IP address is still just like a public IP address. And I was looking at the logs and I was like, okay, why the heck? Like I was trying to understand all the IP addresses reaching us. And I was like, why the heck are some of these not Cloudflare? Like suddenly a lot of the IP addresses reaching out to us were Cloudflare, which makes sense because everything's proxying through Cloudflare now.
Well,
but a lot of them weren't. Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. There you go. Okay.
So that's where I realized I was like, oh, well, of course, port 443 is still open on this IP address. Like, and I'm thinking like DNS takes time to propagate, or
TTL.
maybe the DDoS software is smart in some way,
or maybe stupid in a way that it resolves and caches the DNS. Like, so DNS entry. This is why. So I don't know. A lot of security people can get hyper fixated on one specific area, like binary analysis or vulnerability analysis, and they neglect things like networking and these kind of things. But like, to get a nice total view of the systems and how things work, it really does pay off to study things at different layers, right? So like DNS entries, when you put them on whatever website in Cloudflare, you can usually specify a time to live, a TTL, and that tells whoever gets, because if literally every time you typed in pwn.college, your browser had to send a DNS request to say, what's the IP address of pwn.college? And then come back, like, there'd just be way too many DNS entries. So like you have a way to tell the clients how long to cache that and how long that's valid for. And I don't know what ours was at. I mean, you can get as low as 5 minutes, but like 30 minutes, an hour a day is actually normal, completely normal.
5 seconds.
You can.
Depending on the operating, like depending on, some people ignore those lower thresholds.
Some places just ignore the whole field because it's kind of a shit show.
Yeah, you can. That's the other, and so like it's possible that the DNS software over time would have switched over and used this new one IP address. But if it was already running in a tight loop where it's making requests, I would bet that it just uses that cache value until the TTL time.
Yeah, the other confusing thing is that I was testing myself, like going to pwn.college, and I was just getting our normal Nginx 504 or whatever it is. But I was seeing screenshots in the Discord of people showing like Cloudflare timeout errors. So I realized very quickly that my DNS was also not correctly pointed, like because it had cache. There's background sound, Jan, I think. So I realized my computer couldn't reach it. So I was just trying to figure out how to reach a Cloudflare myself. I could do it on my phone disconnected from the Wi-Fi. I went there. I was like, okay, now I'm getting Cloudflare pages. Had to reset my own. And so that coupled with looking at these logs, I was like, okay, very clearly there's an issue, which is that you can still just reach our server.
And so this was so fascinating. Sorry, about like...
Yeah.
When I was coming up, one of the cool, technologies was like distributed systems and these type of things. And that's what, exactly what you just talked about is like having, like, in a situation like this, you're like, you notice this behavior is happening on your system. And the thing you have to realize is, this is happening to everybody's system. You have to start thinking about it in the global context, not just your local context, but thinking about every other pwn.college user is doing the same thing and having the same problems.
Yeah, exactly. So once I realized that whether because your DNS was just cached and maybe the people DDoSing us, it was cached, I realized, okay, the next thing to do is to make it so only Cloudflare can talk to us. And of course, Cloudflare has thought about this problem. Probably there's documentation discussing this, but as I said at the beginning, I was just learning this all from first principles. So I was like, okay, we need to just know Cloudflare's IP addresses, and only they should be able to talk to port 80 and 443. And sure enough, they're right on their website. They're like, here's all of our IP addresses. So presumably people that everyone needs to configure their system that way. Otherwise, nothing works. So then I had ChatGPT write some beautiful firewall rules so that only Cloudflare could talk to us, turn that on, and before I knew it, only Cloudflare IP addresses were showing up in our logs, but our site was still down. And so that was, read even more documentation to figure out why the heck is the site still down? Why is Cloudflare not magical? Even though, and in fact, I could even see in Cloudflare's like reporting of like security stuff, that they were like blocking certain requests. They were like, oh yeah, this, IP is in North Korea. So we're just like automatically blocking them. And I was like, oh, that's cool. But our site is still down. So maybe Cloudflare isn't the magic bullet we need. And at that point, I was like, oh boy, do we need to go back and figure out Nginx rate limiting stuff? Should I figure out how to do rate limiting in Cloudflare? Like, what are my next options? And that is when Fish showed up in the Discord and said, have you turned on the magic I'm under attack button? And I was like, what the heck is that? And clearly it turns out this is what they've always been advertising, is like the magic DDoS prevention. And I even thought to myself, I visited websites and I never really put it together until then, where there's certain websites where you visit it and it just like puts up this weird screen in front and it says like checking that you're a human for the next 5 seconds. And I was like, these things are probably related. And it turns out once I flipped that switch on, our website started doing that. The are you human for 5 seconds? At that point, I was like very scared. I was like, I don't know how they could be so magical to make this all work. Like, probably we have to set up our infrastructure in certain ways. Like what happens if your first request off to Cloudflare is like trying to fetch some JavaScript resource? Like, they can't put the "Are you human" into that thing because then that JavaScript's not showing up. I was like, do I need to architect our site in a certain way to work with this? Nope. You don't. They have it all figured out. They do the magic, and 5-second stream popped up, and the website was just immediately back up.
Woo!
Yeah. I don't think that's entirely true.
There were issues. There are still more issues, but I could see the dojos.
The website, you could access the website, right?
Yep, I could access the website. I could start a challenge, but then I started getting reports from people that certain pages were not working, and I was like, "See, I was right." Cloudflare, there's magic going on, but its magic isn't perfectly magical. for some reason, whatever they're doing breaks some of our website. And so I was getting very upset with Cloudflare for not being perfect magic. But I was like, you know what? Our core functionality is working good enough. And then I realized, the rest of my day was going to be figuring out how the heck to re-architect for Cloudflare so that some of the broken pages would no longer be broken. And that was my mindset at that point.
Dang. Okay, quite a morning. And what was that time frame like? Do you have like the timestamps? In my mind, it was roughly like 2 hours. It was from like a 6 when I went through and like reread the logs or reread the things. It was like from 6 to 8.
Yeah, it was pretty quick somehow. Like Cloudflare was very, I'm seeing like 8 a.m. Yeah, but I think it was like a 2-hour turnaround. With the exception that like the settings page was broken and the grades page was broken.
And Sensei.
Oh, and Sensei was broken. And I was concerned, I bet Sensei is broken because we're doing WebSocket stuff and like what Cloudflare is going to be magical enough to proxy WebSockets through. I don't know about that. There might be extra settings for that. But then, Jan pointed out during that day, like, but VS Code works and VS Code uses a WebSocket. So I don't know. Things that are just magic and they don't make any sense. We gotta untangle this mess. And then should I jump Adam to the spoiler of the next step?
No, absolutely not. So
absolutely keep them hanging.
Yeah, what happened with the with our wannabe ransomer?
Everyone started making fun of him. Continue. I mean, I guess they were already making fun of him, but they continued to make fun of him and basically said, oh, Cloudflare magic. At that point, I was like, all right, I know this guy's just DDoSing us, and I'm ready to make fun of him too now. Realistic, a little bit of make fun of him. Realistically, I was like, I need to ban this guy on the off chance that someone's gonna like see this message and decide to send them money or something. I don't know. Probably we don't have a user that's like that silly to do that, but I was like, just in case, realistically, I should have these messages deleted and not on our Discord. So I trolled him. I sent him a nice message of thanking him for the Cloudflare lesson, making my morning learning all about Cloudflare. And then I was trying to decide what to do. I was like, maybe this could be a cool learning moment for this guy. Maybe we should invite him into the pwn.college community. He could start learning real hacking versus it was very clear at this point.
Send him to the DDoS mini module. And
exactly. We should have. That would have been a good troll also. It was very clear that it was just a full-on script kiddie. And my concerns actually during this, I realized relatively quickly that it was just like a script kiddie stuff. But so I wasn't really worried about his intelligence. I was worried about the intelligence of the tool, that somehow the tool I'd be fighting with this tool for the next several days. Fortunately, once we got the magic button turned on, everything just stopped. So I was like, all right, I guess I don't have to worry about this guy anymore. And so I trolled him, of course. And then he's like, he started spamming. He was like, how'd I do? I was like, okay, we got to chill, man. And he just started spam. I was like, all right, this is where you get banned and all your messages get deleted. And that was the end of that guy.
Bang. So yeah, and when you say script kiddie, it's interesting. Like my intuition is that it wasn't like a literal script they were running. Like you said, if it was, that would be easy to detect. It all comes from the same IP address. We would see that. We would look at it that way, right? And so that's kind of one way, that's what you'd expect. But what many people don't know, and I think this is part of why I really want to talk about this, is again, the cybercrime has like hyper specialized. Like there's cybercrime as a service is a whole part of the underground economy where you can go and rent from a website. I'm sure they were renting basically a botnet, so a network of compromised systems that some people will rent out to other criminals and say, okay, for you get 10 minutes, whatever, an hour, and you can direct this botnet to any site that you want. And so that's what takes it down. So they use somebody else's resources to do that. They figure out, how do I get money from these people to get it back up? And then they make money on the delta, right? So this person probably wasn't, because if they knew literally anything, they could probably very easily take it out if they really wanted to.
So I think you're probably right that it was just some service that they were using, but there technically was a script involved because they sent us screenshots of their terminal showing JSON output of their attack running. But I'm sure it was just a service that it was talking to.
So
yeah. Well, I think one of our the famous fish is actually watching us live right now. Hello, Fish, and thank you for your guidance in this troubling time. Fish was also, I won't tell all of the details, but he was on the flip side in a very important meeting where the main person who was supposed to present was sick. So he was having to present and answer questions in a very targeted manner from the person in charge, who was, those questions were supposed to go to another person, and he had to talk about. And meanwhile, while helping you do this, yeah.
So we did all this magical Cloudflare stuff. I want to point out one thing. At what point did we pay Cloudflare $250?
This was after everything was worked.
So okay.
Afterwards,
yeah. So exactly. Let's say so. Exactly. That's actually what's very interesting, because for the purposes of proxying a website, what they do actually makes total sense, right? And what you did is the thing that fixes it. Oh, here we go. Here's the man, the myth, the legend. LT Fish, you are welcome in the chat. So, yeah. So that and so then, but you had this problem. It was mostly up, but not all the way up, right? So how do you go about debugging a problem when a website works? I'd say 95% of the functionality worked.
Yeah. So the complicated thing is normally I can like generate hypotheses
95% of the functionality works.
Yeah, well, I normally can generate a hypothesis of if this is broken and this is broken, this is the commonality. So like this is where I should look, and I can start like hypothesizing what's broken. But in this case, it was like the settings page. Sensei, I was still thinking there was something weird about WebSockets, but so the settings page and the grades page were the two big broken ones.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, these pages have absolutely nothing to do with each other. At some point, I threw out this crazy thought. I was like, you know what? Technically, both of these things have something to do with Discord, because our grades page is also deals with like linking your account if you're an ASU student and making sure your Discord is all set up. And then our settings page has stuff for Discord. I was like, you know what? Technically, they have Discord in common, but that has no relevance at all to why the pages can't be reached. Like that just doesn't explain anything.
Yeah, when you told me that, I was thinking of the HTML on the page. I was thinking like, oh yeah, the HTML on the page. Yeah, there's like that Discord badge that links to your username. And I was like, yeah, sure, there's Discord is what I was thinking in my head.
Yeah, I was even thinking maybe the page was like triggering something in Cloudflare's, like it detects that there's a vulnerability on the page, and they're like, you know what, we're going to cut the connection on that. I don't know, maybe probably Cloudflare does something like that. And I was like, somehow these two pages are triggering vulnerability detection. Still seems weird that they would just like hang instead of.
But yes, there is a web application firewall that Cloudflare has.
Yeah. So I was thinking maybe that it didn't seem like a very strong answer. I was trying to set up like basically add myself to the firewall rules, and I did, so that I could connect straight to the site without going through Cloudflare, thinking like, oh, it's just a Cloudflare issue. And when I did that, I still couldn't reach the site. Like I couldn't reach the settings page. So I was like, so Cloudflare broke it, and I even tried turning off the proxy.
That was a similar thing.
It's not broken.
I should have told you, because I was investigating a little bit on my side, and I had SSH'd into the server and was doing port forwarding, so accessing it from itself, and I was still not getting results.
Yeah, I was like
that's weird.
So Cloudflare, but like Cloudflare is the only thing I had done that day. It's not like I pushed a bunch of PRs in. So I was like, so Cloudflare broke our site even when we don't go through it. Like this I don't know.
It's not Yan code, and it's not Cloudflare. What could it be?
Yeah, and I was just like, there's maybe a hypothesis out there on how Cloudflare broke our site even when you don't go through it. But I was really grasping at straws to come up with what that would be. And that's when I realized that the IP table rules were incorrectly configured, and that only Cloudflare could coming in and going out talk to port 443. And so the thing that was stalling out is we needed to query Discord servers on port 443, and they were getting no response, and it would just hang.
Literally the backend servers.
Yeah.
It is actually, you did run, you said IP tables commands from GPT.
Yeah. It did both directions for port 443, not just inbound for 443.
Dang.
Yeah. And fixed that. I was like, okay, reality makes sense again. Fixed that, and the site was just totally working. With one more exception, it brings us to paying them, which was, they want to block a bunch of bots. But actually, for our courses, we have various bots that need to run against our APIs to like pull down solves data and start computing statistics on it, and in some cases, export to Canvas. We need basically code outside to interact with our API. And I was like, this is a problem because Cloudflare doesn't like bots, but we want to bot. Like, what is the solution to that? And it turns out you can allow certain things through without doing fancy bot protection stuff, but you got to pay the man for that.
Yeah, which makes sense. Like you're doing something special. Yeah. You're not just pushing like a stuff in front of your site. So
but if you remember when your Windows would get broken and then the mafia comes in, like, hey, we have a service for that.
No, it's very cool that they will solve DDoS problems for free. It's just then you've got some more advanced use cases, and that's where their business model is.
All right. So we paid Cloudflare $250 instead of reinvesting it into the local hacker economy or whatever that.
Are you saying there's not hackers at Cloudflare?
Came back in.
Jan, do you think ASU would have reimbursed that, or?
I don't know. You never know until you try.
No, you should not pay. This is exactly what the FBI says to ransomware victims and companies. Like, the reason why they keep doing this is because it works and you pay them for your data back.
That's true.
You think labor shouldn't be compensated, Adam?
Criminal labor? Correct. I do think that should not be compensated.
All right. Disappointingly, this person gave up and has moved on.
Yeah, they could have. I thought we were going to have a multi-day battle.
So what's the next step? Let's say you were them. How would you take it down?
Yeah, no, we're not saying that because there's a million ways you can take it down.
No, come on. We teach people how to exploit kernels with full mitigations applied to centers that they could use against the dojo.
Actually, I can answer that. So in a retrospective way. So the biggest thing I was worried about, as I said, was host compromise. Now, fortunately, I woke up feeling slightly safer in that like a month earlier, we had just put in patches to dramatically improve our security posture of someone compromising the host, which was previously for if you've done the intercepting communications challenges, you can start up these little like network environments that can talk, like you can spin up these little mini hostings. Docker does not allow that by default. We turned it on because I read the docs for like 20 hours and I was like, all right, the docs say that in theory this is safe. I don't know why Docker has it disabled, but I'm going to just enable it because in theory it's safe. And then, this was years ago that we did this. Over the years, KyleBot, who we chat a lot with, and knows a lot about kernel security, was like, that is a really bad idea, man. I was like, but the docs say it's safe. And he's like, yeah, but that is also the attack surface for literally like every kernel KCTF challenge that gets exploited every single month. It's always through namespacing stuff. You need to turn that off because it's just boring. At this point, it's not even interesting if you can exploit something through user namespaces. It's just like, it's a given that it's insecure. Like I've just been slowly waiting over the years for someone to drop a N day, not even an O day, just an N day against us to either DOS us or do something really bad. Fortunately, no one ever did. And fortunately, we made Kyle happy before someone did,
and
improving their security.
Actually, not only that, but the architecture changes we've made with multi-node actually helps prevent that. So even if you're able to pop your container and get full access, you are not on the same machine as the database. So you could definitely do some stuff, but you can't do too much.
Yeah. And also, this is not a challenge for people to break our website. Don't DOS us or do things just because you can. Report it to us and get your bug bounty emoji.
Let's talk about how you would bring pwn.college down in its current form with the Cloudflare.
No, but there's so many easy ways to do it, man. Someone's going to run it. DOS is a boring attack, honestly. Full disclosure, DOS is just boring. Like, we should stop some of these.
Let's launch DDoS 4, 5, and 6.
You already have that. It's at your RM-RF level that brings our stuff down to its knees anyways. So before that, though, is the website working perfectly? Like, I actually still think even after you did it, it's like it was 99%.
Wait, was there another thing?
Yeah, SSH.
Oh, yeah, we broke SSH.
And why?
So it's actually the same problem as before. And I said that when you, what was it? Before when I was talking about there was like a DNS delay or whatever, and I was still hitting the actual site. Well, once the DNS fully propagated and is all good, if you ping pwn.college, you're not hitting our server anymore. You're hitting Cloudflare's server. And so in the exact same way, if you SSH to pwn.college, you're trying to SSH into one of Cloudflare's servers. And I don't know, they probably just don't have any SSH, or maybe they do on a different port. It's probably, I don't know. I don't know what they have, but certainly you're not trying to SSH into our server. And so we broke SSH. Now, there's a very easy fix that we just abused very legacy stuff, which was that the website used to be hosted on a website called that actually happened to still be pointing there. And we've been just keeping that backwards compatible for the people that had SSH configs still set up to that. And so that points straight at us, whereas Cloudflare or pwn.college points at Cloudflare. So if you SSH to dojo.pwn.college, you're actually hitting our IP address, which means you're attempting to SSH into our box.
Yeah, and this shows you kind of the complexity of the modern like internet, like not even the web, right? But like you have a DNS entry, pwn.college, that resolves to an IP address, and you can actually have it resolved to multiple IP addresses, which is probably what you have. You have multiple Cloudflare IP addresses in there, but it resolves to a IP address. And so when you go to https:// like it fetches that IP address, goes to port 443 because that's the HTTPS port, and talks to it. Well, when you do SSH hacker at pwn.college, it does the exact same process. It fetches that DNS name, gets the Cloudflare IP address, and tries to access port, was it 23 for SSH?
22, yeah.
22.
You could almost imagine a different DNS protocol that like supported arbitrary IP addresses per port or something, but that's just not how DNS works. So it's and it's you ask for this domain, and it gives you IP. It doesn't know anything about TCP.
Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of an interesting like look behind the scenes as to, it seems something that should be simple, but it's actually not. Cloudflare, I think, allows this, but you also have to pay for it because now port 22 is going through their servers and then back to your server. So if you're yeeting a bunch of data through there, that's data that Cloudflare is going to have to pay for. So of course they should be paid for that. So this is another one of those things that like they can do this technically, but it just doesn't make sense.
Which is funny because they're willing to facilitate all of our WebSocket traffic hitting a terminal in the browser. But I mean, it makes sense. This is where they thought is an enterprisey thing. They actually specifically, they have options for paying for SSH or paying for Minecraft or paying for arbitrary TCP. This is like the offerings. Because I guess lots of people want Minecraft servers through Cloudflare.
Yeah, and this is like, anyways, I think it's super interesting. Like this is what, when SSH people want to access their servers, so that makes sense. But this is not really what we're doing. And the web, I think they're very good and aggressive about caching things on their side, so they actually can reduce the amount of times they need to hit the workers. And B, they're operating at such a large scale that pwn.college's traffic means literally nothing to them. But they can just completely absorb that, and it's not a big problem.
At a risk to our sponsorship, I have heard horror stories about Cloudflare like rolling up on certain websites and being like, you have too much bandwidth going through us, give us $1 million now or we're shutting your website off. Yeah. So I do, partially because of that terrifying idea and partially because we need to make the website better, we want to improve, make ourselves a very nice citizen to Cloudflare so that they don't come to us with an attack.
Yeah, and I mean, there's, I do not feel like I am beholden to anyone for sponsorship. So Cloudflare like scares the hell out of me from an open web philosophy, right? Like the beauty of the web is that anyone can spin up a website and anyone can access it on port 80 or now port 443. There's also the problem with HTTPS certs. So the HTTPS certs, Cloudflare has to man in the middle of those. So fundamentally, they are getting access to your traffic, which is the antithesis of what you want with an HTTPS cert. They also you're starting to see now they leverage their position of being the front end to 40% of the web to do things like, we're just going to block AI crawlers, like by default. And like, they can just do that and you just have to kind of eat that, or you can go into some settings and change some things. But like, similarly to how I really don't like what Google is doing with their browser and their market share, like they are like forcing the web to go into directions that they want because they have this browser market share. I worry a lot about Cloudflare having that on the other side. And it's just like not good when any one organization has that much power over something that should be open and central like the web, or open and decentral. As a counterpoint,
it is very cool how much stuff they offer to the web for free. Of like
you
DDoS
should be scary about people that offer things for free, my man.
Or the product, Connor.
Exactly. You didn't grow up in the web 1.0
but they solved our DDoS problem, right? We might have gone on for days otherwise.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean,
and it would have been awesome. Imagine the things we would have learned.
People were doing classes. They had assignments and stuff. And there was, like it's so yeah, it's very interesting. Like, I think we did the best, right, that we could do, and it's what we should be doing.
And there have actually been side effects. Like I've had a few people reach out to me and say that their country blocks Cloudflare, and so they can no longer reach pwn.college, which is really unfortunate. But it's hard to say what the answer is to that.
I don't know either. Crazy. Okay, anybody have any other DOS thoughts? Cybercrime, ransomware?
How
you're going to end on silence?
pwn.college right now.
No, but don't think too hard about that, because it's actually very easy, and I don't want you to do it.
Yeah, it's just not interesting. How about Windows thoughts? Any Windows thoughts? The people want more Windows. LT Fish want that Windows life.
Windows.
All right, we're all just going to stare at each other. All right, cool. Well, thank you so much, everyone. I hope you enjoyed listening to our saga, our play-by-play of the morning of 1,000 requests. And we are pwn.talk. Come check us out. We are the I can say this, absolutely best podcast dedicated to pwn.college that you will find anywhere. And if you want to create your own podcast talking about pwn.college, then Jan and Connor would be happy to be on that show. So,
or you might get a visit from a little bit of web traffic.
I think there's some jokes in there, but it's just not very good. All right. Thanks, everyone. Goodbye.